All right, guys, so we got two of the AFC's best teams, the Baltimore Ravens and the LA Chargers, going head-to-head on Monday Night Football. We got the Harbaugh brothers in a reunion game. One of the last times we saw this was in a high-stakes Super Bowl matchup. This game is huge because there's playoff implications for both teams, and there's also a decent chance that these teams could see each other again in the postseason. There's so many fun storylines and intricacies and stat lines and everything regarding this game. We're going to dive into all of that and more, so let's go ahead and start, man. The first thing we got to mention, we'd be foolish not to mention the familiarity between the Baltimore Ravens and the Chargers. Patrick Ricard just called the Chargers the LA Ravens. So obviously there's Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh's brother. There's Joe Ortiz, the Chargers general manager, who was the director of player personnel and scouting with the Baltimore Ravens last season. There's Greg Roman, the former Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator who helped Lamar Jackson win MVP in 2019. There's J.K. Dobbins, Hayden Hurst, Gus Edwards, all drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, who are starters on their offense, as well as coaching staff and other players. Man, it runs really deep. Here's what Patrick Ricard had to say.
Personally, I joke around and say that they're the LA Ravens just because they have so many coaches, personnel, players. Most importantly, they have Harbaugh's brother over there. And I think they're similar coaches, so they need similar players, similar guys, so it makes sense that they're using a lot of people that have been here.
So let's start with the Baltimore Ravens offense versus the Chargers defense. Now we got to address this Chargers defensive unit because it's a real defense, man. They got playmakers on every level of their defense. Middle linebacker Deion Henley has 94 tackles. He flies all over the place. He's very smart, cerebral, diagnosis plays. He's a short tackler. And then Derwin James, so the middle linebacker right there in the core of the defense. And then they got the safety in the secondary, and Derwin James, who's an all-pro type of player with 59 tackles, 5 pass deflections already this season. Then they have a corner in Elijah Molden, who's playing really good football, already has 3 interceptions on the season. And then the real strength of their defense, man, is their front. Like their defensive tackles and outside linebackers are special. They can really rush the passer, and they can really stuff the run as well. You guys need to know the Chargers are the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. The Ravens are going to have their hands full, and a big part of this is they have 4, 5, 6 really good pass rushers, starting with Joey Bosa, who's an all-pro type of player. Khalil Mack, we know the caliber of player he is. And then a guy that's really emerged for them this year is Tuli Tuipulotu, who has 7 sacks and has really turned into a guy that's a consistent force as a run defender and pass rusher. And then Bud Dupree, to add in another guy you have to deal with, who has 5 sacks on the year as well. And then their interior boys up front, man, can really stuff the run. They have the number 1 scoring defense, like we said, only allowing 14.5 points per game. They're 11th on run defense and 12th in pass defense, so they're a well-rounded machine. They're a defensive unit that you can't just attack them in their weakness in the run game or the pass game. They're well-rounded, and they're the number 1 scoring defense. Now, let me tell you this, man. The Ravens will have been battle-tested heading into the playoffs because the number 1, 2, and 3 defenses this year, the Ravens have all played or are about to play with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Denver Broncos, and the Chargers. They'll have played the 1, 2, and 3 overall scoring defenses heading into the playoffs, not to mention they've also played the Chiefs and the Bills, who have top 10 defensive units in scoring. And they also still have to play the Eagles, who are the 6th overall defense in points per game. So they'll have played 6 of the top 10 scoring defenses during the regular season. And they'll have played the Pittsburgh Steelers twice. So to say that this Ravens offense is going to be battle-tested heading into the playoffs, already have faced the best defenses, would be an understatement. Now, we're talking about how good this Chargers defense is, but we would be remiss to not talk about how equally good, if not better, the Ravens' offensive pieces are. They have the NFL's leading rusher and Derrick Henry, who's an absolute monster to stop. You don't want to let him get going. He can take over a football game. We've seen him do it. We've seen him do it time and time again, especially in the second half of football games. In the fourth quarter, man, he can really break a defense's back. And then they got a guy who's about to be a 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is second in the NFL in passing yards. He has a 67% completion percentage. He's averaging 9.0 yards per attempt, which is the highest in the NFL. He's got 25 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. He's got the second best QBR in the NFL and the best passer rating in the NFL. Here's what Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh had to say on the MVP quarterback.
It's what he's done, like to your question, how is Justin, that's what he's been doing his entire career. He has the most completions of any quarterback in the history of the National Football League in their first 5 seasons. He has the most fourth quarter comebacks, in that time span of any quarterback in the NFL. So it is what it is. I mean, enjoy it. He's not only one of the best in the game currently, he's one of the best of all time.
Lamar Jackson, I know you mentioned earlier this week that you've seen him up close, but
Yeah.
what kind of challenge is he to have to defend? And up close, what have you seen that makes him so great?
He's great. He's at the highest level. I mean, he's right there with Justin. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the game currently. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League. They are. I mean, I would be like those two looking in the mirror when it comes to, competitiveness and doing anything and everything for their team. Mirror images.
He says, hey, Lamar Jackson's right there with Justin Herbert. And I hate to break it to my guy, but Justin Herbert is not in the same conversation as Lamar Jackson. He's just simply not. And you're about to see that on Monday Night Football, man. And I know it's going to be fun, but in all seriousness, I know we got Chargers fans tuning in on this as well. I think this is going to be a great football game. Justin Herbert's a phenomenal quarterback. We'll talk about their offense here in a second, but I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to win this football game, and we'll continue to talk about why. All right, so we got off on a tangent there, but let's go back to the Ravens offense versus this Chargers defense. All right. Yes, the Chargers are great on defense, but the Ravens are great on offense. We talked about Derrick Henry, talked about Lamar Jackson, but that's not it. They got 2 elite tight ends, and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are both healthy right now. They also have 2 really good wide receivers, and one's got over 500 receiving yards in Rashad Bateman, who's a first-round selection, who's built some chemistry with Lamar. Anytime he gets targets and opportunities, man, he's produced this season. He's a great route runner. He gets separation, and he can also run past your defense with speed. So look out for Rashad Bateman, especially in big moments on third down and such. But Zay Flowers, he's a top 5 NFL wide receiver right now, not just in my opinion, but statistically. He's 5th right now in receiving yards with 727 receiving yards. And what's really cool, too, is he's averaging 14 yards a catch. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season. And Rashad Bateman is averaging 16 yards per catch. So these 2 receivers are explosive receivers that are averaging big chunk plays every time they touch the football. Another stat here is Lamar Jackson has the most production in expected pass situations. So Lamar Jackson, whenever you're expecting him to throw in those 3rd and long type situations, he's still the best in the NFL right now in production. The big key here is, can the Baltimore Ravens clean up the slop, as Dan Orlovsky would say? He said, hey, Baltimore on Sunday had 12 penalties, 5 more than Pittsburgh, 3 turnovers, which is 2 more than Pittsburgh. The kicker went 1 for 3, and their kicker went 6 for 6. He said, clean up the slop, offense will be fine, man. It's funny how the Ravens have one slumpy type game, bad penalties, missed kicks, stuff like that, and all of a sudden people are hopping off the Ravens hype train when just a few weeks ago they were, analysts were saying that they're the team to beat in the AFC and that Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And, it's just funny how you see the media ride the waves, and they especially hopped off the Ravens hype train, Lamar Jackson MVP hype train, after this last game against Pittsburgh, but we'll see how they bounce back. I saw a stat from Warren Sharp that was talking about the Ravens versus single high safety looks and man coverage versus zone coverages and two high safety looks. So the Ravens are much more productive against two high safety looks and much better against zone coverages than man. I'm intrigued to see if the Chargers will, stray away from some of their tendencies because they play a lot of two high, they play a lot of zone. I'm curious to see if they try to switch it up from something they don't normally do to impose something on the Ravens that they aren't quite as good against, if that makes sense. So that'll be a cat and mouse game between Jesse Minter and Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken, and I can't wait to see that go down.
How are your thoughts on the matchup again?
It's a tough matchup. It's a very good football team we're playing this week, and they're highly ranked pretty much in every area. Winning football team, very physical, very tough, extremely well coached football team, no question about it. One of the best coaches of this generation, no question. I believe that. Even if he weren't my brother, I would say the same thing. So we've got our work cut out for us. Got to travel across the country and play on Monday Night Football. Jim is a great. He's a fun guy. He's my brother. I've known him, since he was born, and I've got that on him, a couple months. But he loves football, man. He loves his players. He loves football. He's always got some way of seeing things, I think, that's really interesting, and that's why people are interested in hearing from him.
All right, now let's talk Chargers offense versus Baltimore Ravens defense. So while the Baltimore Ravens are going to have definitely a challenge versus the Chargers defense, I don't think that they quite match up with us the way they match up with some other teams, especially with our ability with Derrick Henry in the run game, the quarterback designed run game with Lamar Jackson, that element of it, and then the receivers that can really threaten off of play action, and the type of quarterback that we have that can really attack those too high and zone coverage type of looks. I think the Ravens offense is going to have some success. Let's look at the Chargers offense, okay? So Justin Herbert, if you compare the stats here, Justin Herbert has really good numbers. He's just not asked to throw as much as other quarterbacks because of the Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh style of offense. He's got 2,100 passing yards, averaging 218 passing yards per game, 13 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he's been very careful with the football this year, which is really good for their style of play, how they want to run the football, play good defense, and then, take some big shots. That's what they want to do on offense, man. They want to run the football, and they want to throw the ball deep and have explosive plays on offense. And Quentin Johnston is their main deep ball guy, but Ladd McConkey's not to be slept on either. And reminder that Ladd McConkey was playing for the current Ravens offensive coordinator and Todd Monken for 2 years in Georgia, where he won 2 national championships with the Bulldogs. So there's some familiarity there as well, going back to our very first point of this preview, which is the familiarity. Looking at these two rushing attacks for the Ravens and Chargers, Derrick Henry, 1,185 yards, averaging 6.0 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns. By the way, Derrick Henry is only 1 touchdown away from tying Jamal Lewis's record for the most rushing touchdowns in a single season in Baltimore Ravens history. He's definitely going to break that record. J.K. Dobbins for the Chargers, he's averaging a healthy 4.8 yards per carry. We know how talented J.K. is. I've loved J.K. He's been one of my favorite drafted Ravens. I think he's so talented. I love his personality and his work ethic as well. But he was just never healthy with the Ravens. And that's why ultimately why the Ravens moved on, let him have a fresh change of scenery, and he's balling this year with the Chargers. He's got 726 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, averaging 4.8 a pop. And he won the game last week for them against the Bengals in Sunday Night Football. And then we know Gus Edwards, undrafted free agent rookie that the Ravens brought in, had some really strong seasons with the Ravens. Not quite the same this year with the Chargers, but he has had some flashes with the Chargers. So J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards were going to lead the charge there for the rushing attack. And then Herbert actually has – it's funny what a change of offensive coordinator can do, because Herbert has 182 rushing yards, which is more than he's accustomed to, and a rushing touchdown. So Justin Herbert will actually take a football every now and then on one of the RPOs, and he's not afraid to get out there and scramble and pick up yards with his legs on, big third down, second down, and long type situations. Man, he can really He can move. He's underrated as an athlete. So Ladd McConkey, Josh Palmer, and Quentin Johnston, their top 3 receivers. Ladd McConkey, someone to keep your eye on who's really heating up, who's a great route runner. He finds separation, and he's building some strong chemistry with Justin Herbert, so keep your eye out on McConkey. I think it's interesting here, too, because we talk about matching up stylistically, right? I don't think the Chargers match up well on defense to defend the Ravens, and I think this is a great matchup for the Ravens on defense as well, because the Chargers are not a pass-first team, and the Ravens' biggest issues have been against pass-first teams defending the pass. It's not Greg Roman's forte to dial up comprehensive passing attacks and scheme guys wide open all the time, and he's not a pass-heavy coordinator. And the Ravens have the best run defense in football right now, and their struggle has been against the pass. So it's kind of like the biggest weakness for the Ravens is not a strength for the Chargers, if that makes sense. However, one thing that Justin Herbert has been good at is pushing the ball downfield. And I think the Chargers, if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to do that a lot. And it's not that they can't do it. It's just that they don't do it a lot. So Justin Herbert's actually the best quarterback right now in the NFL, pushing the football 20-plus yards downfield. He's first in yards, first in completions, first in touchdowns on those type of throws. I think Quentin Johnston is one of the guys to keep your eye on. A guy that Ravens fans were interested in taking in the draft before they ultimately drafted Zay Flowers, which turned out like a good pick for the Ravens. But Quentin Johnston, definitely a big, fast receiver that can stretch the field, and he's hit some home run type of plays with Justin Herbert this year. So watch out for that matchup. If he's one-on-one with Brandon Stevens, who struggled to get his head around the football, or maybe our Darius Washington, who's a smaller guy, is trying to cover him deep at the safety position, it'll be interesting because Kyle Hamilton and Darius Washington, they were moved to the 2 deep safety looks last week after Eddie Jackson and Marcus Williams were both benched. So if that part of the Ravens defense can continue to stay improved as they were last week against the Steelers, the Ravens could definitely have some success on defense, especially with their ability to stop the run, which is something that the Chargers really want to do, is get J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards going in that run game, hit play action, hit deep shots. If the Ravens can stay back with their 2 high safeties, with Ardarius and Kyle Hamilton, I think they're going to have a lot of success on defense. A big matchup here, something to look at, and a big nail biter here for the Ravens is Roquan Smith, who's not been practicing. Today's Thursday, and he still hasn't practiced at all. Travis Jones also has not practiced. So 2 staples in your run defense on the front, with the defensive line in the middle of the defense, both not practicing. If they cannot go, make no mistakes about it, it's a huge loss for the Ravens defense, missing 2 of the guys in the teeth of the run defense that's been so good this year. Roquan Smith is an animal in the run game. Travis Jones is a beast as a pass rusher and a run stuffer. He demands double teams. He's dominant in one-on-ones. Those 2 guys, if they can't go, or if one of them can't go, it's a big blow for the Ravens defense and a big opportunity for the Chargers offense. So the Ravens have been very good in primetime. Not just this season, but John Harbaugh, since being a head coach, has been pretty much dominant in primetime games. And Lamar Jackson's versus good teams since 2023 is the best in the NFL. He got 11 quarterback wins, which is first, averaging 10.5 yards a pop. In the passing game, 27-4 touchdown to interception ratio, 131 passer rating, 31 offensive touchdowns. He's really good against good football teams with winning records. And the Chargers are a test for the Ravens. If the Ravens win this football game, I think they're in the driver's seat to win their division. Because then if they beat Pittsburgh, they're in a great spot, because they had that rematch with Pittsburgh. If they lose this game and they drop another game in the division, and the Steelers, beat the Browns on Thursday Night Football, which maybe if you're watching this, you'll know the result of that. It's going to be a uphill battle to win the division. So if the Ravens beat the Chargers, I think they're going to win the division. And then they even have, if they ran their schedule, there's actually still a shot they could win the number 1 seed. Very small chance. But they're definitely in the mix still for the number 2 and number 3 seeds, where, you're guaranteeing, home playoff games. Reminder, they do have the tiebreaker against the Buffalo Bills. And if they beat the Texans, they'll have the tiebreaker there because they play them on Christmas. So Ravens are still in a great position to have a high seed in the playoffs and play home playoff football games and ultimately get to where they want to go. The Ravens have an elite offense, the best in the NFL right now statistically, and yards per game, points. Look how good the Ravens offense is. And now the defense is improving with some of the changes that have been made. The addition of Tre'Davious White, who played well. Nate Wiggins getting more playing time in the secondary. The moves at safety. The issues are being resolved right now on the defense. And if they can continue to get better on defense while still having a very potent offense, man, the Ravens are going to be a real tough out in the playoffs, man. So I'm excited for the Ravens moving forward. Let me know in the comments section below your score predictions. I'm going to go Baltimore Ravens, 34 points. Yeah, man. Maybe I'm a little bold there against a good Chargers defense, but the Ravens are really good on prime time. And I think they're really irritated what happened last week against the Steelers. A lot of it was self-inflicted. We know that. And the Ravens are going to want to get right in front of the national audience. I'm going to go Chargers 24. And I think if we can hold the Chargers under 25, that's the key number there. And I think the Ravens are going to walk away with a win. So let me know. Again, your score prediction. Smash the like button if you got any value out of today's preview. Man, I love you guys. Appreciate y'all. And we'll see you in the next video.
Ray, when he wasn't looking, he ran me over.